From their humble beginnings on a cattle station in the Kimberley of Western Australia, Ringers Western's inspiration comes from their roots. Ringers pride their brand on being tough, adaptable, sometimes cheeky, but always offers you class and loyalty. These principles, along with a high standard of design and quality, set Ringers Western way ahead of the mob. Personally, 3/4 of my wardrobe is Ringers and the majority are their jackets. With winter coming soon, head to ringerswestern.com to check out the range and get yours today. And we're back with another episode of Reminisce with Jaidyn. Very fortunate today. We've got Norm Hutton on, who's the CEO of Heart Kids, a foundation that I'm an ambassador for and something that's really close to my heart. So thanks for coming on, Norm.
Absolute delight, mate. I think our real CEO would probably say he just elevated himself. But no, it's great, and it's a pleasure to be invited along and a pleasure to be able to have a chat to you outside of our normal conversations.
Yeah, we catch up all the time discussing what we're going to do next with the foundation and how I can help. We met maybe 6 years ago. I obviously had my heart condition that I was made aware of when I was 18 at a draft camp through an basic ECG, and through that I was lucky enough to still get drafted, and you reached out almost immediately after I got drafted asking if I'd like to come on as an ambassador with Heart Kids.
Yeah, and I think that what prompted that, mate, was at the time the narrative went from your football prowess to your health condition, which was very unfortunate given that, that was going to set up your future, and the way in which that was dealt with. And after speaking to your parents as well, it seemed to certainly me and Heart Kids that constant sort of balancing between people wanting to focus on something that is not what you're about. You're not about your heart condition and all that. You're about what your aspirations are in life. And with you, it was to be an AFL footballer. And I'm so pleased that in the end, Collingwood were able to see past that and do the right thing. It's hard for me to say that being a dyed-in-the-wool Richmond supporter, but I thought that was a credit to them. That they were able to give you that chance, that dream, if you like, to help you to live your dream. And hence it was very, I think, relevant that we reached out and said that we support what you're doing and how you've handled it.
Yeah, certainly. And coming into the AFL, obviously you're there to play football. That's your main priority. It's your job. And something that's always interested me is giving back to other people and making other people happy. I'm very fortunate in the position that I'm in. And as soon as you reached out, I think it was my player development manager. He goes, look, we've got this bloke, Norm from Heart Kids. He's reached out and wanted you to come on. And I jumped at the opportunity, getting to see kids smile. And I remember back when I was a little kid and I didn't have heart conditions, or I did, but I didn't know about it.
Yeah.
Just seeing an AFL player, spending a little bit of time with them made my day, made my week. And it's certainly special if they are having it a little bit harder than the rest of us.
I like you referred to me as that bloke Norm, because I think a lot of people say that. I can say to you though, on that very first meeting, and I've repeated this to other people without your knowledge, not only were you talking about the kids, but you also spoke about the parents and the empathy you had about what they were going through. And I think that, and this is just me, my sort of view of it, is that because you found out at a reasonably late age, then you were able to see the impact that had on your parents.
Certainly.
Whereas most kids wouldn't have seen that. And having that empathy, what they went through when they got the news, but particularly given with your sister and your mum, is that it was a perspective that not a lot of people have the way you had it. And it sort of stood out to me the way that you showed immediate interest in how the parents were contending with the chronic illness that had been diagnosed with their children.
Yeah, actually I haven't looked at it like that, but yeah, you're 100% right. I was old enough to understand and see how it made other people feel, I suppose. We'll come back to Heart Kids, but it all started for you at Trans Australian Airlines.
Yes, I was at TAA, for those old enough to remember that airline, that morphed into Australian Airlines, and then they were absorbed by Qantas. And for me, I had a great time because I was in marketing and travelled around the country and got able to cheap airfares overseas. So it was a case of, for most of those years, I put myself first. I was enjoying everything I was doing. It was a great environment. And when Qantas came into the fray and said, well, if you want to stay in the game and have a job that you want, you have to move to Sydney. And I said, I'm not moving to Sydney. And a mate of mine had just become CEO at St John, and he offered me, convinced me to go there. And I only knew about St John as walking around the boundary at the footy, and the first aiders.
Yep.
Didn't know much about them, and I thought, why would I want to join them? But I did, and it sort of opened my eyes up a bit about other people's their needs and how I can make their lives a little bit better in whatever way. So it was a great move for me.
So what role did you have at St John Ambulance?
Well, it was probably twofold. I came in as their marketing and business manager because their expertise was obviously in first aid, and they wanted to commercialise it, particularly in the workplace area. Was only just starting to become popular about having legitimate rules and code of practices around workplace first aid. So that was sort of what I was doing in my core job, but first aid instructors came under my umbrella as well. So I became an instructor to go through to see how they become an instructor, if that makes sense. And I did, and Jodie, who you know is my wife, she was my assistant in those ones, and we ended up teaching first aid 2 nights a week for 7 years at the old Essendon Hospital. And I got to talk to so many people about why they were doing first aid, understood, the circumstances around them, some of them because they'd lost people while they were there and they felt helpless. Other than, some of them had sick kiddies that they wanted to make sure that they could look after. And that provided me with a real different sort of insight as to, I'm not there just for myself, but, by teaching first aid as I was, hopefully it was making a difference in people's lives. So that was, it sounds a bit sort of, wanky, but but it did change my thought process a fair bit away from Norm Hutton into other areas, which I didn't expect, but I enjoyed every minute of it.
It's funny how we get to that point in our lives where, we're all the same. We grow up in the first 18, 19 years, it's all about us. It's what am I doing? Where am I placed? All this sort of stuff. And I don't know, there seems to be a point in time for most people where it just clicks and you start thinking about those around you and thinking about how your actions affect them. And you obviously realised that at your time at St John.
And it wasn't something that it was ever that I thought about. And it was only when I really started teaching people first aid and hearing their stories and thinking, geez, I've had a blessed life here. I've been travelling around the world anywhere I wanted. Everybody's healthy, playing footy, doing whatever I want. And all the while these, so many people had these stories to tell that I was oblivious to. And the more I heard them, the more I started to appreciate what I had. And I think that changed, my outlook.
Yeah, it's amazing. And you touched on your footy there. Yeah. Were you quite the footballer back in the day?
Well, I played with Braybrook, so they had a great history of producing great footballers in Dougie and Robert Greenawagon and others. I don't think I was in that category with Teddy Whitten, but Georgie Bissett was one of my coaches.
Yep.
Which was interesting. He was for a little bloke who looked as though he was anything but a footballer. He could outrun anybody, and his pre-season training was pretty tough. But I enjoyed down there. Matthew Lloyd's late father, John Lloyd, was our coach down there to 3 premierships at Braybrook. And so it was a great club to be with at the time. The FDL was a bit rough.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Les Twentyman, who you probably know of from the 20th Man Foundation, he was one of my nemesis. We became great friends. But he belted me quite a few times playing for Albion, so it was good to think back on. But I survived it. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, it's amazing how times have changed, and I mean, I run out in the MCG and I feel safe. I'm never going to get hit, sort of thing. But I mean, my dad's told me stories where it used to just be pretty violent on the footy field.
Well, look, I guess it was a case of people trying to flex their own muscle and make a reputation for themselves, and the football field was an extension of everything else, and that's where they wanted to do it. But Braybrook was a great club. FDL was a great competition, and they had a lot of characters around at the time to look at and learn from. So it was good.
No, that's great. We were saying before, obviously, Trans-Australian Airlines, St John Ambulance, quite commercial. You're in the marketing side, I suppose. Yeah. You then move to Variety, where it's a not-for-profit?
Yeah, Variety, the children's charity. When I went there, again, I went there because a friend of mine was the CEO. I seem to sponge off people, but that's all right. And I went there because the organisation, I think, gave me the next extension of working more with kids, which hearing the stories at St John about the children, that's why they were doing first aid. The whole children element sort of resonated with me, and Variety was a great organisation. It was an event-based organisation, so it was a lot of fun, I suppose, based around the bash, the famous, or some people might say infamous, Variety Bash, which was created by Dick Smith many, many years ago. It was an international charity too, so I used to get to every year go to their international conferences. But it was good because you were able to be a bit more creative in trying to come up with event ideas that were going to be a lot of fun and make money for the organisation, and extension help children. So that was very, very good fun.
Your mind does just go funny places when you're thinking up these events. I've had obviously 6 years of dealings with you, and I think the funniest one was you were trying to get the Marvel Stadium superhero clash, and you're wondering if I knew anyone. I was like, mate, I just play on there. I've got no idea.
Yeah, I try lots of angles. I know I had Melbourne Storm were going to. I thought, well, now Storm is an actual a superhero, and I thought, well, great, we'll go to Melbourne Storm and we'll get them on board, and they just kept saying that she's a voluptuous superhero. How are you going to make it work? And I said, well, it'll work.
I'll sort it out.
But then COVID intervened, so it never got off the ground. But like a lot of things, I often say to the staff, Amy, as you know, being one in particular, that I'll come up with all the silly ideas. You make them better ideas, then make them work, and I'll take the credit for it. So I think that's a reasonable thing. But I remember we're talking about Variety. One of the events we put together was the Golf Ashes, and I say this because of your love of golf.
Yep.
So it was just the Ashes were being held, and we had a lot of personalities in Melbourne. So we thought, we'll put together Australia versus England Golf Day out at Amesbury, out down at South Melton, and that was great, and one of the members of the Australian team was going to be Richie Benaud.
Oh, beautiful.
And so he was flying down from Sydney, so I volunteered to pick him up at the airport and drive him to Amesbury, which I did. But a day or two before, I'm thinking, well, how can I do some fundraising around Richie Benaud, given the fact he's such an icon. So his beige jackets came to mind. So I rang Channel 9 wardrobe department and said, was there any chance of donating a Richie Benaud beige jacket? And they said, nope, he owns them all. We don't have any. So I thought, oh, great. So I got one of the staff members to go out and do a few op shops and see if they could find a beige jacket. and I'll get him to sign it and we'll auction it off. So she found one and I had it with me, and when I dropped him off at the golf, I showed it to him and said, listen, Richie, any chance you're signing this? And he looked at it and looked at me and looked at it again, then opened the label and saw that it was a London-based maker.
Yeah.
And he said, oh, this is all right. So he signed it. I thought, beaut. So I thought that was the biggest tick I'd get. So it went to auction after the golf day, and I was outside talking to somebody. Staff kept coming and saying, oh, it's coming up now. It's the opening bid $500. Now, it cost $10, okay? It cost $10 from St. Vincent's or Brotherhood or where it was. And they said, look, it's opening bid $500. I said, oh, that's great. Then she'd come out. They're up to $1,000. Oh, that's great. $1,500. Fantastic. 2.5. And I'm starting to wear worry. Do they think it's actually his jacket? It's not. It's an off-shop jacket, which he signed. So it ended up going for just under $4,000.
Unbelievable.
So I had to go to the guy and fess up and say, mate, it hasn't been worn by Richie. But fortunately, he said, it's for the kids. It didn't matter. But so I went from thinking, oh, this is great, to thinking, oh, my God, we're going to get done for fraudulently flogging off Richie Benaud memorabilia.
Yeah.
So you do run tread the fine line sometimes in your creativity, but that's all right.
And then we'll move from variety to Heart Kids. Obviously, that's how we have our connection. And so we've done some major work. We hold my lunch once a year. Mm-hmm. How did that thought come into your head?
Well, having secured you as an ambassador, it was a case of how are we going to use you?
I'm just a little pawn you're moving around.
That's exactly right. How do we leverage off you? And obviously playing for Collingwood, that was going to be, well, how do we take full advantage of that? How about if we held a lunch, Jaidyn's lunch for the kids, and which fortunately you agreed to, I think, not really knowing what that meant. And we did the first 2 or 3 at the Westpac Centre. Yeah,
at the Glass House.
Which made it a lot easier for us. And I think that they just it was the right time at the right place. We had some great people to open it. Sally Capp, our Lord Mayor, opened, I think, the first one, which was great, and Eddie Maguire did one subsequent to that. And having some of the entertainment was a bonus. So it all sort of fell together and then became one of those things in terms of Heart Kids anyway, that, we'll just stick to it until Jaidyn says nick off.
Yep. Don't break something that isn't.
That's
don't
right.
Fix something that isn't broken.
This year's, and we went through the COVID years where we had to sort of do things a bit differently, and then this year doing the one at the Old Melbourne Jail as a evening event rather than the lunch. I think anyway it was a fantastic night. It was one of the ones that I enjoyed the most. And when usually you're running around worrying about if other people are enjoying them. So when I think I'm enjoying it, I pretty much think that's pretty good. And I guess you only do that for one reason, which is to raise some funds to help some kids. And I think it's up to around about $300,000 now over the course of the lunches. So it's a great feather in your cap, and something that I think that those that support it, Marketplace Fresh, Grimboss, etc., Biggin and Scott, I can't thank them enough for getting behind your lunches. And I say yours. I keep saying to people, we've got to make them good because they've got Jaidyn's name written all over them. So they're great fun. I like putting them together. Yeah,
like you said, the sponsors, Big and Scott, Marketplace Fresh, Grimboss Building Surveyors, wouldn't be possible without them. They're amazing help, and they don't miss.
Yeah, they don't, and they're all there for different reasons. Marketplace Fresh, they just support Heart Kids because they gravitate to the cause, as to Biggin and Scott, and they've been doing it for almost 15 years. And Biggin and Scott, and as you know, with Anita and John, they lost a child a number of years ago, but they're the first to put their hands up in anything we do. So they're an amazing bunch of supporters that you've got behind you.
That's it. And they put in the money initially as the sponsorship, but when those auction items come, like you said, the price just goes up, and it's amazing how generous the people are that come to this lunch and help raise money to send these kids to teen camp or wherever it may be. but especially the Grim Boss, they always putting their hands up, they're bidding, they buy everything.
They're incredible, and they have an incredible, generous network of friends and family that they bring along who get swept up in it as well. Look, I've been the victim to charity auctions, and end up with all these things I bring home. And Joe says, "Where'd that come from?" I said, "Oh, I bought it at the auction line." I said, just what we need, another one of those. Yeah. But one of the things I did buy, I remember years ago, was when I was at Variety, one of our ambassadors was Maureen Hafey, and she, through Tommy, got us a run on with the team to auction off.
That's a great auction item.
And I end up buying it for my son Luke. And when I got home and told Jaidyn how much I'd paid for it and everything, she said, can you get out of it? I said, no, we can't. And I think she complained about it right up until the day it happened. And then when we saw him run out with the Richmond football team, it was worth every cent that I paid, and a lot more. In fact, the day he did it, he had Benny Cousins' number on his back. That was his and who couldn't play that day. So when we went into the rooms, he was introduced as Benny Cousins for the day.
Yep.
So it was great the way they looked after, and all the clubs, like, they're a credit the way they look after kids nowadays. Or after everyone, but the way they treat the kids and really make them feel so incredibly special. But,
it's great. Every game we run out through that banner, and there's always a kid or two there, and how they get the opportunity, who knows? But they it's something they'll remember for the rest of their lives. And
absolutely.
It's a story to tell, I suppose.
Yep.
Back to the lunch, the entertainment you always provide is unbelievable. You try and change it up. It can be hard. It can get stale if you're doing the same sort of lunch every year. You've got to find ways to mix it up, and you've gotten some great people there. Mike Brady came and sang. We had Marty Fields came and did his comedian act. He's done it a few times, actually. Yep. The one in the old Melbourne jail you were saying this year had roving magicians. You had opera singers. Yeah,
it's like anything. I guess people go along, yes, for the cause, but when they convince sort of other people to come along, those other people might not be necessarily as connected to the cause as they are. So you've got to ensure that you don't, embarrass people, I suppose. You might say that, might be not the right phrase, but to make sure that it's a quality event that they'll say, oh, put us down for next year.
Yeah.
And if you can get to that point where people are saying, oh, you've got to go to Jaidyn's dinner, whatever it's going to be, then you get that back because the experience they had was great, not just the cause and not just because of Jaidyn or anything else. It's because the experience was so good. And, like even this year, having the opera singers, and I'm not into opera, but have them sing at the old Melbourne jail unexpectedly, and they did the Phantom of the Opera and a couple of others, was really such a showstopper to me. And I thought, we've pulled the right lever on that one.
Oh, for sure. And I'm similar as you. I've never been interested in opera music, but the feeling of the dark old Melbourne jail and these two singers that were just amazing, had most amazing voices, was certainly something I'll remember and cherish for the rest of my days, that's for sure.
And we're very lucky, having, you mentioned at the start of being an ambassador for Heart Kids, and we've got some amazing ambassadors in terms of Guyton Grantley, who emceed your last one so well, and the likes of that, and David Strassman, international ventriloquist, and who comes out here so often, and him and Teddy Bear. And I
was fortunate enough to go to his show, and he's amazing. How he does all those voices.
I don't know either. He's a genuine, passionate guy about Heart Kids, and even though he might be based in LA, he's always quick to say, I'll do a video for you or whatever happened to be. And it's fantastic to be able to have those people. In fact, Hayley Rasso, who's with the Matildas at the moment, is an ambassador for Heart Kids. So you're in good company. Or maybe they're in good company. Is that better?
Yeah, we all are obviously under your company.
Don't say that.
You talked about David Strassman. We'll probably give him a little bit of a shout out now, but in COVID times, obviously it's hard to interact with the kids when there is no interaction in Melbourne, I suppose. You were able to set up David, and David was good enough to give his time once a week to...
Yeah, look, we were so incredibly fortunate, as you say, during those COVID years where we weren't able to engage with families, and that personal engagement really is quite critical in a lot of the things that we do. There were two things that ran in parallel, one of which was that Jaidyn was able to – I asked Jaidyn if the cast of Harry Potter at the time that we're playing at the Princess Theatre would do a few things for us in terms of reading some stuff, and he said, yeah, no worries at all. And then I asked David if he would do something for us, and he immediately said, will do. And with the Harry Potter cast, they end up reading every night every book of Harry Potter. It went for 7 months.
Unbelievable.
And whilst that was happening on Saturday afternoons, David would come in on Facebook from LA to do a show with him and Teddy Bear. So we were so incredibly fortunate that they put their hands up, and it kept that connection for our families with families and families with heart kids. And through a time when people were doing it tough, and they were looking for how they were going to engage, and so that was one of the great credits to our ambassador community, the way in which they pulled together to help us through that fairly tough time.
Yeah, and that's it. There's great people giving their time, and it certainly helps put a smile on the kids' faces when they may be in hospital. It's hard with COVID, all that sort of stuff.
It was funny because one of our families that used to come in on in particular the Harry Potter ones, were down in Geelong, and it's Fiona and her daughter Alaska. So every night, and I'd tune in and it'd say, and whoever was reading, say, who's listening or who's tuned in, and it'd say, it's Fiona from it's Fiona here from Geelong. And then next one would be, and I'm here from, and also Alaska. And they say, we got somebody from Alaska. and you'd almost wait for it, because the new reader would say, we got somebody here from Alaska, because she'd put something like, it's a hi from Alaska.
Yeah.
I said, we got somebody from Alaska. I said, no, we're from Geelong.
Yeah.
And so it was one of those little sort of running jokes, more for us, because we were expecting it. So it was good.
I was saying yesterday, we're very fortunate, obviously, me as an AFL footballer, David to have his talent as a ventriloquist, the Harry Potter cast, their ability to perform in Broadway shows. Very fortunate, and something that not everyone can do. So, for instance, in the AFL, there's 850 players on a list, and we're very lucky to be there. We have talent, we work hard, that sort of stuff, but it's limited to 850. To be a good person, and you've named a lot of good people here, it doesn't take a talent to be a good person. And although there's only 850 opportunities to be an AFL footballer, there's 25 million opportunities in Australia to be a good person. So, I think certainly the more good people we can have, and obviously with your time in Heart Kids, you would have seen thousands of good people come through. Look,
it's people, when they're asked and when they understand why they're being asked, generally speaking, you'll get support, right? It's interesting, the people who put their hand up quickest with Heart Kids are the families of Heart Kids.
Yeah.
And there's a case, there is a bit of giving back, but I think because they've lived that, they've walked that walk, they know helping is so important, whether it's just helping by participation, whether it's helping by volunteering, whatever it happened to be. So we're very lucky, I think, in Australia, because we have a close-knit community wherever you are. Right? We had at David Strassman, we spoke about him before, did a breakfast for us late last year, and we were able to bring down some Heart Kid families from Rochester that were devastated through the floods. And they still don't, many of them still don't live in their homes, and they came down from Rochester to attend David's breakfast as our guest. In fact, I don't think your listeners will mind. I think you sponsored those, so you might remember.
Yeah.
They came down and they bought auction items, they bought raffle tickets, and they were amazing because they'd seen that people were reaching out for them and they want to pay back. So we're very, very lucky, I think, in Australia by and large, but Heart Kids is exceptionally lucky.
Yeah, we certainly are. With Heart Kids, you obviously run different events, 2 Feet in a Heartbeat, Teen Camp, Superhero Day. Are they all your brainchild?
I wish. No, we Super Boss Day, or Hero for Heart Kids as it is now, that started in Victoria a few years ago. Infamously, you tried to smash a cake at one stage to help us launch it. And as a big brawny AFL footballer, weren't able to break the cake.
Oh, it was solid chocolate,
okay,
I reckon.
It was solid chocolate, yeah, okay.
You should have made it hollow.
Yeah, I think we did, but anyway, we won't go down that path. So that started here and now and morphed into a national campaign. The 2 Feet and a Heartbeat, which comes up this October, was sort of the brainchild out of Queensland. And again, has gone national. And Sweetheart Day, which is in February, it came out of New South Wales. So I think that it's been a bit of a team effort to come up with things that can, resonate in a broader sense. And now that we are indeed a national organisation, having those national campaigns and not just confined to, a locality where it was conceived, so to speak, it was has been a great advantage for us.
And a great initiative of Heart Kids is Teen Camp. I was fortunate to go down and spend a day with the kids. They're out there, they're doing archery. There was lots of different activities, hanging out with the animals. What came up with?
Look, with Teen Camp, we've had a number of things, one of which is Tween Camp, which is when they get a bit old and try to encourage the parents to let go a little bit, because as you can appreciate, a lot of the parents, really naturally hold their heart kid very, very close to them. So we provide an environment where it's a bit of respite for the parent and as much as an experience for the child. And then with teen camps, when they start to look for other kids that have got, similar stories to tell, they gravitate together, and teen camp is a great environment to not only give them something that they might not necessarily be able to engage in the normal sphere of their life, but also it provides connections, and they connect with other kids in other states. They realise that they're not alone in terms of their conditions, which is incredibly important to their mental health and coping. And in fact, in September, there's a national teen camp because we're at the moment doing helping with a national action plan and standards of care across the board, which is vitally important. And Heart Kids is playing a pivotal role in that, with working with the federal government in having what a lot of people took for granted, that there were some standards of care which didn't exist but will exist soon.
I had Matt Runnels on the podcast a couple of weeks ago, and he spoke about that feeling of connection and belonging, and certainly Teen Camp allows these kids that have grown up with heart conditions that platform to feel a sense of belonging and connection. So it's amazing. Are there any things on the agenda for Heart Kids at the moment, any big new ideas you've got? What's coming up?
I think a lot of our ideas at the moment are because we had COVID where we couldn't do a lot. There was probably a few things came out of that. One was to get back to what we were doing, to make sure that, some of the relationships that we had and that may have sort of been on pause for a while been rekindled. But we're also looking at a number of new initiatives, with whether that's within the Indigenous community and other cultural activities that or environments that enable us to have a broader reach and ensure that doesn't matter who you are, where you are, you get the same amount of service, the same support that anybody has got traditionally. And also, we live in a virtual world now. And, we didn't do that a few years ago. So it's also about transitioning a lot of our support so that it's accessible virtually and not just in terms of having to meet us or meet with us or whatever happened to be.
I suppose it's a good time too for anyone out there listening. If you've listened to this chat and heart kids or people with heart conditions is something that touches you or is close to your heart, then certainly head online, check out Heart Kids. If there's any way you can help, donate, give your time, anything, it'd be really greatly appreciated. Obviously, Norm and his team, especially Amy, who I have a lot of dealings with, they're amazing. They're always in the hospital. They're setting things up. The time they spend on the road is just amazing, and it's certainly something close to my heart too. So if you can in any way help, I'll put a link in. But if you can help to Heart Kids, like I just touched on, the work you do, Norm, is amazing, and you're one of the most positive, upbeat people I've ever met. I was reading your CV and it says highly successful relationship builder, and that couldn't be any more accurate. You're just a lovely man, and you give so much of your time to this charity. But in recent times, you've had it a little bit tougher than you may have thought.
Yes, yeah. A few years ago, in fact, it was just after, I think, one of your lunches, a couple of weeks later, I went in just for a routine, checkup, and they found that I had a cancer in the stomach, and they took me in for a major surgery and number of months on chemo and radiotherapy, and then a bit of a pause for 12 months and then back onto it. But that just helped, reinforce the fact that, even though I'm doing it tough, I remember saying to my kids that they were taking turns in taking me in and out of Peter Mac, even days when you sort of start to feel a bit, sorry for yourself and all the rest of it, why is this and that, and you look across and there's a 10-year-old little kid in a wheelchair about to go in for radiotherapy, and suddenly you think, what am I complaining about? But look, it has enabled me to, I think, do a lot more than I maybe planned to do, both personally and professionally with Heart Kids. I remember writing for my kids or my family, my broader family, a whole about 4 pages or 5 pages about confronting challenges, and I did it because I think that a lot of times we focus on the negative and not the positives, and COVID educated me towards that. I think most of us spent a couple of years thinking, I hate this, it's, I can't do that, I can't do this, and I can't do that, and we didn't celebrate the things that we could have been celebrating. And in my instance, some of those examples were communions, engagements, births of new kids into the family or whatever happened to be. And those things were being overlooked because people was, thinking, this is happening, even celebrating Richmond Premiership. So again, it's, and I know it's a word I've used a few times, but a perspective means a lot. And it sort of, my kids have been amazing. The hardest thing in dealing with my challenge was the people around me. And I remember saying to a couple of the people at work when I was telling them, we spend, most of our lives avoiding using the word cancer. So when it comes to you, you've got to educate yourself. Then, it's just another word. In the end of March this year, I did an abseil event off a city building as for Heart Kids, yep. Which my kids were dead against. You
invited me to that, but there was no way I was that. I'm scared of heights. So.
Yes, I remember that from an I-Fly experience because one of the side effects is you lose feeling. In my feet. So when you're going to abseil and you're supposed to bounce around off of it, not having feeling your feet is not quite the best thing to have. But again, you sort of think, you just move on with things and do what you can. And I've been lucky because I've got such a supportive family, including my work family. They've been amazing, and I wouldn't be able to, continue to do what I do without their support. I get henpecked at home. Can you say henpecked nowadays? You probably can't.
I've never actually even heard it.
Oh, have you? Okay. Well, I get badgered at home.
Yep.
And then for a while I got badgered at work too. But that was all good fun because they just made sure that I wasn't biting off too much that I could chew.
And like I said before, I had a really high opinion of you and your character, I suppose. And when I was made aware that you had this cancer, obviously I've seen what chemo can do. People can be really lethargic, I suppose, after. It can have all these side effects. You're going in, you're having chemo on the Wednesday, and you rock up Thursday morning with a smile on your face, here to help the kids. It's just unbelievable. And I think you went from having a really high I had a really high opinion of you to someone who was quite inspirational, and it's amazing how you just front up with that smile on your face, and you never waver. So it's a credit to you.
Look, I appreciate that. It's look, there are times when you sort of think, I just want to have a time out for a while. And recently, I've sort of pulled back a little bit from Heart Kids, more out of necessity in terms of energy levels rather than anything else. But it's all been good. And there's been a few things. I think one of the stories about having going through the treatment, and that was many years ago when I was going back to the variety days, I started an idea about having an emergency services memorial, a combined one, which there wasn't one. And this came out of the Black Saturday bushfires. And after talking to numerous ministers, numerous commissioners of emergency services, finally, after 12 years of persistence, they opened it last year on the 14th of September, which was the first day of my second round of major treatment, and I couldn't go. So after 12 years, finally, they were opening something that had been I was so passionate about, and I couldn't be there for the opening. But my kids attended, and I was able to write to them what it meant to them to be part of that, because it was so, in many ways, me not being there, it did me a bit of a favour, because it made them a little bit more aware of them representing me at that particular opening of the memorial.
Yeah, and like you said, 12 years of hard work and persistence to get it done.
Yeah.
That's one of your major traits. You're very persistent, very hardworking, and nothing. There's no bigger thing to ask, and I think that's why you've probably made such a successful career in the not-for-profit work. And
look, I'll finish. Are we finishing up soon?
I reckon.
Right,
Yeah.
Well, I'll just finish on this note. Heart Kids is an amazing organisation, not just because of the work it does, which is phenomenal. And I say that, if you like, at arm's length from Heart Kids without my hat on. But in all the organisations I've been to, none of them have the relationships with the people that they've supported like Heart Kids does. When they talk about the Heart Kids family, they really do mean the Heart Kids family. So if anybody wants to be part of the Heart Kids family, just get onto heartkids.org.au and become it, because it's a great organisation. You get a lot more comes back than you people realise.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And like I said earlier, jump on and help wherever you can. I've got a question. Are you up to your times with the music? You a big music man or not? Because I've got a question to ask.
No.
I ask all my guests on.
Yeah.
So you're having your next birthday party. So for you, maybe your 40th, we'll say.
We'll say that.
We'll say your 40th, and you're allowed to get 2 acts, so 2 singers or musicians to come and play at your birthday party. Mm-hmm. You've got like a 7 till 10 slot just to start the party, and then something to finish it. Who are you choosing?
Does it matter if Does it matter if they're alive or dead?
They can be deceased.
Okay, well that's all right. Well, Kenny Rogers.
Kenny Rogers, yep.
For him to be the later one, because I think you want some of that mood music and the gambler. You want
like
people.
Cow to the county.
Yeah, that's right. You want a few sherbets and a few people before they do that. In terms of opening the evening, I'll go down Billy Joel. I love Billy Joel. I was able to go to the concert this year, which was great. I don't think Jodie could have got a seat further from the stage, but nonetheless, it was a great experience. So Billy Joel to get people up and going, get a bit of an adrenaline flow. Kenny Rogers to get that mood happening later in the night.
No, that's a very good lineup, and I hope my name's on the invitation list. Thanks again for coming on, Norm. Like I've said multiple times, you're just an amazing man. You're very inspiring. to meet you 6 years ago. I've learned so much, and to continue our connection and our relationship is something that I really want to do. And your continual work of Heart Kids is just amazing. And I think you should be very proud of yourself, and people probably don't tell you enough, but you're an amazing man, and I couldn't speak any highly of you.
Thank you very much, Jaidyn. You're a credit to yourself, your family, and Heart Kids is incredibly fortunate to have you on board. Thank you.
No, beautiful. Obviously, today's episode wouldn't be possible without the sponsors. So thank you to Ringers Western. I'd get Norm in one, but he just seems to wear his Heart Kids stuff everywhere. So might save that for another time. But if you haven't already, head on to ringerswestern.com. Check out their range of clothes especially. And they've also got drink bottles, coolers, all the stuff. So jump on there and check that out. Thank you to Braden and Roland Media. It's a great space we've got here. He's got a new project in the works, so we might not be in the van for all that much longer, but it's a great spot you have, and thank you for all the work you do behind the scenes. To everyone back at home, if you haven't already, head to our socials, YouTube, Apple Music, Spotify, Instagram, TikTok, all that sort of stuff, and help us out. Like I said before, I'm not great on the social stuff, but if you at home know what to do, go and do it. And until next time, we'll see you then.